All right, so now that we have enabled the authentication on the Firebase console, the next step would be to implement our register view model, since we are using the MVVM design pattern for our Flutter applications. The register view model will be responsible for capturing the information, the username, which is the email, as well as a password from the widget, from the UI, and then it is going to use the Firebase API to authenticate the user. So if I go over here to the registered screen, this is what it looks like. And this is what we have to create. We have to create the register view model that represents the particular screen, which is the registered screen. Right now in the view models, we don't have anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new file. And the file name, we're going to go ahead and use register_view_model ... a very descriptive name, as you can see. And inside the register view model, we're going to go ahead and create a class. So let's go ahead and create a class called RegisterViewModel. And it is going to be extending, it is going to be using the change notifier. So this means that we can tell other callers about the changes that we are going to be doing, like a message that's supposed to be printed on the screen. So let's go ahead and create a message property. This message property can be, or the value of this message property can be something like, well, the username already exists, or the email already exists, or your password is weak, and things like that. Next up, we're going to go ahead and create a register function. And in order to register, you have to pass in the email, and you also have to obviously pass in the password. Now, in order to register using Firebase, the first thing we need to do is we need to use something called Firebase Auth. So I'm going to go ahead and create a try block and going to use Firebase Auth. You can see that it kind of comes up. There we go. And I can import it. So it's imported right there automatically on the top. And I can use the Firebase Auth because in the starter project, we have already added those packages. So here you can see the Firebase Auth already added. And that is why it's so important that you should be using the starter project, because it already has all of the packages that we will be using. So in the Firebase Auth, we're going to say Firebase Auth.instance. And the name of the function we're going to be using will be create user with email and password. A very descriptive function name, as you can see. We can pass in the email that is already passed to the register function, and we can pass in the password, which is also passed to us. Now, when this particular function returns, it returns you a future. So we have to await for it. In order to perform await, we have to also make sure that our register function is marked with async. And now we can go over here and await for it. We will get some sort of information back, which will be, let's say, user credentials. So this is just a variable that I'm going to create, user credential. And I'm going to wait for it. Now, if the person is, registered successfully, this user credential object will not be null. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a Boolean is registered, like a local variable, and I will assign it the value false. And then I can update this value is registered equals to, and I can say that if the user credential is actually not equal to null, then it means the person has been registered. Let's go ahead and format this document. There we go. Now, we also have to take in account of different kind of authentication errors that we can expect. And when you're using Firebase authentication, there are a number of authentication errors that can happen, like a weak password or email already in use. So we're going to go ahead and capture on Firebase authentication. So this means that if the error type was, or if the error was of type Firebase exception, then it is going to capture it. And if inside over there, we can go ahead and check. If code is equals to weak password, this means that the password was weak. We can do something. We can say message equals to constants dot weak password. Constants is simply a file that is part of the starter project that contains these static variables like weak password. We can go ahead and check it out in the utils folder. So right over here, you can see constants. And weak password is simply a static string. And the reason that we're doing that is that we have all of these variables or constants with some messages or values in one place. So if we change it in the future, we only have one place to change, and it is automatically going to take into effect everywhere. So after changing this, the other thing that we have to make sure is what if the email is already been registered. So if the code is email already in use, then the message will be something different. The message will be constants.email already in use. After that, we are going to go ahead and probably notify the listeners. All right. So if something happens, we can go ahead and notify the listeners. So I can go ahead and say notify listeners. And you should also add a generic catch. So catch exception. And a generic catch, we can simply go ahead and right now print it out, but you can log this error if something bad happens. The other thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we are returning is registered, whether it is false or true. So make sure that we are registering or returning is registered, which will be true or false. But we can't really register or return anything because you can see that our function is void. So let's go ahead and accommodate that and also make sure that our is registered is inside there. There we go. Let's go over here and change this registered to a future of Boolean. And the reason that we're doing future is that this is an async function. And that's it. This will be our register view model, which will allow the user to register. And right over here is the main line, which actually calls the Firebase Authentication API, pass in the email, pass in the password, and then register a new user. Now, right now, it's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is that our register view or the register page, this page, has no idea about the register view model. So we have to go ahead and integrate and use our register view model right inside this particular page. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lecture.